Hey guys, welcome back. Today in this video, let's talk about the Chinese input method. As we know, the Chinese language is very different from the European language, just like the situation mentioned in the telegraph video that I made before. So after entering the modern computer era, how to write Chinese language on the computer became a question for those computer engineers. In telegraph, the solution is helped by the number to build the bridge from the telegraph code to the Chinese characters. But the Chinese telegraph code is hard to remember if you are not a professional telegraph operator. So into the PC era, the telegraph code may not be very realistic to be the computer input method. So how to do that? What we refer to the typewriter base is a good idea, but when you see the Chinese language typewriters, I believe that almost all the people will also think this is an almost impossible way. Totally. In fact, in history, IBM had created a Chinese typewriter which looked like more compact and convenient, which was called 电话打字机. However, this IBM Chinese typewriter is to remember a code list, just like the telegraph code list, composed of 4 digital numbers. So it results that the cost of learning was high. People who wanted to learn the 电话打字机 from zero to a professional operator needed about 4 months. Plus, compared with English type speed at that time, 140 words per minute. A professional typist of 电话打字机 typing speed was about 45 characters per minute, and only 5,400 characters were added to this typewriter, so it was not able to type all characters of dictionary. Although the good point was that it was smaller and more convenient than the traditional Chinese typewriter. Actually, it was easily able to find that using the typewriter approach as the Chinese input method on the computer was not the practical way, apparently. Therefore, the computer engineers at the time had to change another way to rethink this question. Now, let's turn the clock back to the 1970s. In National Jiao Tong University in Taiwan, there was a kind of keyboard created which was especially used to type Chinese characters. When you see the keyboard, I believe you may have remembered that the meme photo about Chinese keyboard on the internet. But in fact, in the early days, this was a real situation, seemingly. Usually, this kind of keyboard was designed for the big side type and the middle side type. If the keyboard has 100 character switches, it will be defined as a middle side type keyboard, and the big side has thousands of character switches. Then, in 1973, National Jiao Tong University made another kind of keyboard, which is according to the Chinese character's root, 字根, a part of the character, to design the keyboard, and this way really diminished the sum of keyboard switches from thousands of switches to 496 switches. And this can be identified as the middle side type. By the way, as we know, Japan also is a country that also uses kanji. Japan also created this kind of Chinese character keyboard with a similar design approach, just like this keyboard created from 1989. In spite of the Chinese characters, the keyboard still has 100 switches or even thousands of switches, which is still too big and is so hard to operate. Before the really practical Chinese input method was popularized, those giant keyboard may have been the only better way to write Chinese characters on computer at that time. From some document in history, we can see some keyboard development situations. Just like in mainland China in 1987, the national standard of arriving Chinese keyboard switches was even published. In this document, we can see the 2K type keyboard looking like this, which has 2048 switches and can be identified as a kind of big size type. The giant keyboard era existed until the first Chinese input method was invented in 1976, and meanwhile, the amount of PC users was growing, so this situation also pushed the new Chinese input method developing and improving. Then, those huge and heavy keyboards were gradually leaving the history stage. Cang Jie, who was a legendary ancient Chinese figure and also was the inventor of Hanzi in the legendary story. So following this approach, the first real Chinese input method was named Cang Jie Shu Ru Fa, which was very appropriate, and its inventor was Zhu Bangfu. Meanwhile, this input method also was the sign of the era's Chinese start point from this moment to today. Just like people got the direction of making Chinese input method after Cang Jie Shu Ru Fa appearing. In fact, until now, in the Chinese language world, there were so many input methods that were born. At first glance, it looks like there are so many input methods, but there is a point which we need to notice. It is the design logic of those input methods. Although every input method has their own logic to type Chinese words for their users, and even some input methods are from traditional Chinese characters word, and some are from simplified Chinese word. Actually, many of them has very similar logic. Overall, there are two main categories: the Pinyin input method and the Chinese character stroke input method. Besides both categories, there are some other input methods, and they have mixed both categories input method input logic features. But except some small groups who like to study those rare input methods, they have never become a kind of popular input method in the Chinese language world. So I think those rare input methods might belong in the third category, the other category. So what is the Pinyin input method, which also can be identified as a kind of input method according to the Chinese word pronunciation to input the word Hanyu Pinyin or 注音符号, and then it can transform to the character automatically. But the most Pinyin input method uses the standard Mandarin as its input code. So if a man whose first language is not the Mandarin and never have learned the Mandarin, he may find it hard to use the Pinyin sort input method. The stroke input method is another logic of input Chinese compared with the Pinyin input method. The stroke input method is more likely to handwrite. This kind of input method's logic is that if people know the way of writing the character on the paper, then they know how to write on the computer. So, under its logic, if a man can't read or doesn't know the pronunciation of the Chinese characters, but he can write them, technically, there will not be any hindrance of typing Chinese on the computer for him. But in fact, according to my experience of using this kind of stroke input method, that logic exactly is similar to handwriting on paper, but I need to remember the corresponding stroke position on the keyboard, and it's very hard homework for me. Plus, because of the big difference between computers and paper, the users still have to spend time to adapt the difference, although there was a similar logic. So, which one is better? To be honest, I prefer the stroke class input method. That's because nowadays, most people are using the Pinyin kind input method. So, if you can use this kind of stroke input method to type in front of friends, that's another cool feeling. Okay, now, if we talk about this question from practicality, the kind of Pinyin input method can be learned very fast, and with the help of advanced computer tech, the input method can guess out which character is what you want to type, even if you just type 1 or 2 code. But the shortcoming is art of repetition, because in Chinese language there are many characters which have same pronunciation, just like 在, 在, and 在, 要, and 要, etc. So sometimes you have to stop typing and choose the right character. Compared with it, for this kind of stroke input method, the odds of repetition is lower, but its shortcoming also is very obvious. You have to spend more time to learn. And before becoming a proficient user, your typing speed will slower than the kind of Pinyin input method users, very clearly. Okay, now the time of today's video, maybe about 10 minutes, but this video is not over, so I'm planning the rest of the content to be put into the next video. So in the next video, we will continue today's topic, and at the time, I will detail several popular input methods which nowadays people are using in the Chinese language world, and how to use those input methods. So I hope you can like this video. Have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.